Intermittent fasting is one of the fastest growing trends in weight loss today, but going without food for 16 or more hours can feel pretty intimidating. So in this video, we're going to go over some kind of tips and tricks for you about how to handle your hunger, how to stop eating after dinner, and a couple other things that my wife wanted me to say, and I can't remember what they are, but we'll go over them.
This is why you don't do openings. All right, so I think you got out hunger, didn't you? So,
I did.
Okay,
That was number
well,
one.
good. Yeah, there you go. So, and understanding hunger, I think, is one of the things that is the most intimidating part of intermittent fasting. The thing about hunger is it does ebb and flow throughout our day, but we have structured ourselves in such a way that we invite hunger in. So, we eat breakfast at 7 a.m. We eat lunch at noon. So when we look up and we're busy and we're doing a whole bunch of things and we look up, it's noon, and all of a sudden we experience hunger, even if it hadn't been on our radar at all.
It can be a very subconscious thing too. I mean, you may even just glance at the clock and it kicks off this thing like, "Boy, I think I'm getting hungry." Yeah. So our dog Maddie, perfect example of this, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Breakfast is at 6:30.
Yes.
Lunch is at 11, and dinner is at 4 o'clock. And yes, she eats 3 meals a day. If it's 4:05 and she has not eaten,
yes.
What happens?
Oh yeah, she's staring at me.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And she can't read a clock, so she has no, she just knows the internal cues that she has.
Yeah, and it's not hunger is not the same as stomach growls. Even though Maddie's stomach growls, everyone's stomach growls at certain times. The stomach growling is due to smooth muscle contractions in our digestive tract. They're going all day long, 24/7. The reason when there's food in our system we don't hear it is because that food dampens that noise. But even when we don't have food in there, our digestive tract is contracting and moving out sludge and mucus and things like that to prepare us for the next meal. So stomach growling is not necessarily equated to hunger, but in kind of the same vein, I will say that if you are experiencing dizziness, or you're not feeling good, or you're getting shaky, or you're groggy, I mean, those are indications that you're not just dealing with normal hunger. You do need to get something to eat.
Right, and that kind of leads us in our next thing, is that you really need to stabilize your blood sugar. Those things you just mentioned, many of those things are associated with low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So blood sugar is affected by the foods we eat. Sugar, refined carbs, whole carbs, fats, proteins, they all affect our blood sugar a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And if you're eating a diet that's high in sugar or refined carbs, you're going to find that you're going to get a very quick spike of blood glucose, which is going to cause a pretty big release of insulin to drive that out of your bloodstream, and then it's going to drop way down here. And when you get to this low blood glucose level here, your body is immediately telling you you've got to eat again.
Oh yeah, insatiable hunger, that craving that comes on out of the blue.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the point too, where you may be prone to having some of the shakiness or lightheadedness or fatigue and that kind of thing. So it is something that you have to be careful of.
So when you eat to stabilize your blood sugar, we're talking about your whole foods that take time to break down. Whole fats and protein sources, they're not going to give you a spike really of blood sugar that's notable of any sort. What you do have to watch out for is the carbohydrates. So you want to stay away from the processed and refined carbohydrates that break down super easy and absorb really quick and go.
Right. And we're talking about, a low carb and a keto diet are probably the best way of eating to stabilize your blood sugar, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah. Well, and even when we are, eating in the right way to stabilize our blood sugar, sometimes it can feel hard to stop eating after we have started. I think this is one of our primal things that, when we didn't have food available at the convenience store at 24/7, we had to eat enough food when the food was available. And so even the act of eating will stimulate your appetite and keep you wanting to eat. So we utilize in our home and in our coaching program, we call these stoppers. And it's simply a food, drink, or activity that's going to separate you from the activity of eating. One of the things I like is a cup of hot tea after a meal. So the thing with hot tea or coffee, if you want that, is that takes time for you to sip and to drink. So that gives your brain time to realize that, oh, hey, I'm full, and it makes it much easier to separate from the act of eating.
Right. You have to listen to your brain telling you that you're full.
You do.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do that, you can do something that's going to change the taste in your mouth. Brushing your teeth with a minty toothpaste is another stopper that we would talk about.
Right.
And also exercise. Walking after dinner is something that we've started doing. We use more all the time.
Yep.
Joining me sometimes.
So my new routine now is as soon as we're done with dinner, I get my sneakers on, I go downstairs and I walk for 20 minutes. And sometimes you come down and join me.
I do, right? So we had an old treadmill that's on its last leg, and so we decided we wanted to get a new one, but instead of getting rid of the old one, we gave that one to me. So I get the old one, you get the brand spanking new one that's got all the dials and lights and all that kind of stuff in it, which is totally unfair. But anyway.
Yeah, it's also like 6 inches taller than hers,
Yeah.
so I'm like way up here, and there's a fan on it that blows on me.
Yeah,
so
so we're not really walking together. You're walking above.
I'm enjoying
above
my
me.
time on my treadmill.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, those are just all ways to allow you to separate from eating, and that's very important with intermittent fasting, especially at dinner time. But you need to get yourself stopped so that you can start your fasting window.
Right.
And this brings me into the next one, which is the mental hurdles that we have to overcome to allow ourselves to easily work into intermittent fasting. And by mental hurdles, I mean the things that we grew up with that were the mantras of the day. I'll starve if I miss a meal. I'll lose muscle if I miss a meal. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It jumpstarts your metabolism. The one with I'll starve, I used to think that. I used to worry about that. So you're leaving the house to go to work and you don't eat breakfast. It can be a little intimidating.
Our parents always used to ply us to clean our plates because there were starving kids somewhere in the world. So you always had that kind of in the back of your mind. It's like, well, if I don't clean, I'm going to end up as a starving kid somewhere in the world,
yeah,
right?
Right. Well, what I like to do for people that feel that intimidation is just start yourself with the easiest form, which is what I would classify as 12-12, which simply means you consume all of your calories within a 12-hour window and you fast for 12 hours. So that might be you finish dinner at 7 p.m., you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. And then from that, once you get comfortable with that and you see that you're not going to starve, and you can increase your fasting time a little bit more, an hour, another hour, up until you get up to where you can go from ending dinner to eating, breaking your fast at lunchtime.
Right. And 16-8, so 16-hour fast with 8-hour eating window has kind of become the kind of the very basic, typical thing that most people do.
Yeah.
So you eat at 11 or 12, 11 or noon, and then you're done eating by 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. What about the metabolism in the morning and breakfast revving your metabolism?
Right. So we always grew up with this thing that breakfast jumpstarts your metabolism, right? So there is a little bit of truth to that the thermic effect of food, which means that it takes energy to process that food, will get your metabolism raised up a little bit. It's a fairly minimal effect. In reality, your metabolism starts revving up, way before you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the hormones that kind of get all your bodily processes going, and this is what kind of results in you waking up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Cortisol spikes up in the morning, and that really gets gets us up and gets us ready for our day. And also, one of the other myths that I brought up was that we'll lose muscle if we skip a meal.
Yeah.
And there is some evidence that if we go too long with a fast, we will have more urea nitrogen excreted from the body. That is a waste product of protein breakdown. Muscles are a lot of protein, so we could be losing some muscle in an extended fast. But that's not going to happen within a day when you're just skipping a meal. So you don't have to be worried about that.
That was more talking about 2 or 3 or 4 more, extended days of fasting.
Yeah.
I used to use that excuse a lot when I weighed 270 pounds too. Yeah, I don't want to lose my muscle mass. I got to eat.
Yeah,
right?
you had a lot of muscle mass because you were carrying a lot of weight around. So.
Yeah, I kept up my muscle mass.
Yes, it does. And so those are just some mental hurdles that we do have to overcome. And I will say trial and error works for you really well. You will feel more comfortable with intermittent fasting as you go along. And that brings me to our last point, which is change up your routine. You don't have to get stale. You don't have to be boring. If you want to do 16/8 intermittent fasting and you're in generally good health, it's fine to do. But if you want to take a Sunday off and go out for breakfast, or maybe take one day of the week and extend it so that you're fasting for 20 hours and eating in a 4-hour window. Yeah. Just keep it interesting for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good, your body does adapt to things. So I think it's always good to kind of we call them curveballs, right?
Yeah.
So throw the curveball, even with fasting.
Yeah, and so those are the things that we would say have really made it easier for us. They make it easier for the people that we work with in our programs and things like that. I would say of all of those, it's really, I'm going to point to the one of stabilizing your blood sugar. If you are eating a diet that has a lot of refined carbs and things like that, and it does make it much more challenging, in our opinion, to get to that point. If you want a place to start, our 0, 1, 2, 3 strategy, or what we call our 4 daily habits for weight loss, are a great way to get the sugar and refined carbs out of your diet and bring in the whole foods that have great fiber to carb ratio. They're going to break down slowly. They're going to control that hunger. So we'll point to our strategy.
Yep,
here.
And check it out if you like.
Yep, and thanks so much for watching. We always enjoy giving this information to you and sitting down and chatting, but we are going to go to lunch right now. And thanks so much, and we will see you next week. Please subscribe and have a great week.
So in this video, we're going to share some ideas that can kind of help you control your hunger and some other things.